Hello and welcome, dear listeners, episode 253 of the Reformed Gamers, the show all about theology, video games, and we are on the eve of some good old web slinging. I'm one of your hosts, Logan, and joining me, Micah had to sit this week out. You know, he needs to recuperate. I really think the reason Micah sat this one out was so he could stay up late, take the day off from work tomorrow, and play a bunch of Spider-Man, you know, which I don't blame him.
He is totally no-lifing Spider-Man. Like midnight tonight. Like
watch
tomorrow.
Keep an eye on his Twitter feed. Watch him start sharing a bunch of photos from Spider-Man 2 because, you know, he's all about that photo mode. He's real good at it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he posts. But yeah, joining me is, I mean, you've heard his voice before, whether you've listened to Talk TRG on the Patron side of things, or just Nate's been everywhere on TRG, it seems like. But Nate, man, say hello to the dear listeners.
Hey, dear listeners, I'm back.
He's back. He's back, man. Just like
I'm the co-host you didn't ask for and that you don't deserve.
But he's the one you need. He's the one you need.
I don't know about that.
I mean, you're the one that I need. Otherwise, it was just going to be me for an hour talking to the camera.
No, I'm totally glad to like sort of stand in for Micah since he's probably just like, you know, like we said, he's gonna like totally no life Spider-Man too.
Yeah. Let's play a little bit of a game real quick. This will be fun for Micah.
Okay.
And maybe a little disturbing for our listeners. But do you think that when Micah plays Spider-Man, do you think he wears a Spider-Man costume of some sort?
I don't know, man.
It is October.
It would not surprise me in some capacity. But it's like which Spidey jammies is he going to be jamming?
I don't know, man. Yeah. This is probably a little too far. And I recognize that. I'm self-aware enough to recognize that. But you know, in the original Spider-Man game, there was an outfit where it was Peter just wearing the Spider-Man, like his mask, and he was just in a pair of boxers, just web slinging around New York. That's how I imagine Micah.
Like mostly naked Spidey.
Yeah, I guess that's weird. Yeah, now that I've said it out loud, I'm not comfortable with it.
Well, we could sort of like dress that up a little bit and be like, yo, just
sure.
he's sort of doing his version of Greg Miller's shirtless Spider-Man. And he's got the Spider-Man mask on. He's got like gym shorts on, and he's just chilling on his couch. And that's the Micah vibe.
That's the Micah vibe.
You know, he's
good
like
times. Good times.
He can be Jim Shorts Spider-Man.
Jim Short Spider-Man. There you go, Micah. But no, for real though, we are recording on the eve of Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Wonder. Dude, I'm convinced that the only thing that could happen just happen tomorrow, that would make the world just completely implode on itself, is if Taylor Swift somehow just like drop 3 albums in one day. And it's like, okay, well, that's the end of the universe. We're done. we're done. You know, it's been a good ride. But there it is, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how it is.
I don't know, man. I mean, like T Swift is kind of a hot number right now. Like she's hanging out with that Kelsey dude from he plays for the Chiefs, right?
I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't follow.
I'm pretty sure he plays for the Chiefs. But yeah,
that does sound right. I could probably ask my wife. Let me try this real quick. Hey, Camilla. Yeah. What team does that football player play for that Taylor Swift is dating? Kansas City Chiefs. There we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Of course.
I thought he like because I think his brother.
Do what? He's number 87, y'all. My wife can tell you.
Because I think his brother plays for the Eagles.
Yeah, because they played against each other in the Super Bowl. That's right. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that being a thing because the mom was all happy and she was all like, "Oh my gosh, you know, my kids!" And she had like that jersey, that was like the split jersey. Yeah. I remember that now. I don't follow sports, but that was one thing I do remember seeing. I do remember reading.
I like some. I'm not as diehard as I used to be, but I do like football. It's fun.
I'm more of a college football guy myself. I don't know why. I think I prefer college football.
I'm just a Pittsburgh sports guy.
Okay.
I'm like I am deep in the heart of Western Pennsylvania, and we
Mm,
bleed
yep,
black and gold. So it's
yep.
like even though the Pirates are just like they're like basically at this point in time like a professional farm team for everybody else in the league.
Okay.
The Penguins are always like fun to watch. I don't know anything about hockey, but I'll watch a Pens game. And
Okay.
Steelers football, it's like if it's on, I'll watch it. I used
Sure.
to be crazy, like throwing stuff and screaming and
Oh, you you had the spirit of Pittsburgh running through your veins at one
oh
point.
dude, it was like yeah, we were yeah. I
Yeah.
would get a little like incensed.
Oh, we
Um
know. We've seen the news headlines. We've seen the YouTube videos. We all know. We all know how y'all act. But man, so as always, you can write in to the show over on patreon.com. And one of our write-ins has a question that he'd like to pose to us, which is fitting here on the eve of Spider-Man 2. Coming in from a Sojourner that says, "Sup, dudes? Time for TRG to settle this debate once and for all. Which actor is the best live action movie Spider-Man?" Now, for those who don't know, we've got three. You got Tobey Maguire, the OG. You got Andrew
mhm.
Garfield and Tom Holland. Nate, who's the
Okay.
best one,
So
man?
dude, that's a super loaded question because each one brings a lot of merit to the role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Toby is by far the best Peter. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
Garfield is by far the best Spidey. And
Absolutely.
then Tom is like a really good blend of the two. He's
Mm-hmm.
not the best Peter. He's a good Peter.
He's fine.
And he's a good Spidey. Like he's a good
Mm-hmm.
mix. Like so overall, like his two halves kind of are a little more cohesive as far as like
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
full blown character.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, dude, that's an impossible and silly question. And so Isaac should know better. He should know better.
But he
Like,
doesn't,
but
does
he
he?
doesn't. You know who the best Spider-Man in film is? It's
Here we go.
Peter B. Parker from the Spider-Verse films. Dad mode Peter Parker is
Nice.
like
Yes. Yes.
bathrobe
Spe-
Peter Parker. Yes.
Especially him in Across the Spider-Verse. He
Hmm.
was a lot of fun in that one. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, I didn't expect us to be so on the same page with this in regards to the three different Peter Parkers, but I'm gonna be honest. Oh crap! Now I'm torn. I was gonna come in here and say Tom Holland is the best because he's the best of both worlds, but I don't know, man. There's something about the OG Tobey Maguire. Um, when he's walking down the street and he's just like, doing his little finger guns thing.
Yo, emo Pete.
Yeah, dude. I remember watching that movie at the time. I was like, I hate this. This is so stupid. But now I
Hmm.
look back on it, I'm like, no, I embrace the cheese. It's so funny. It's so
Yeah.
memeable. It's just the rest of the movie's garbage. But that particular character, gold,
And
man. I feel like
those
he takes it.
movies had like the worst Venom. Um
Oh, oh, yes, they did. Yes,
like and
they
that
did.
it's a real shame because like was it Topher Grace or whatever?
Mhm,
I
mhm,
like
mhm.
him in a lot of other stuff, but that's
Yeah,
just a really bad miscast. Like
yeah,
he should not
100%.
no.
No, that's not Eddie Brock. That's not Brock. I was watching a thing the other day, and it showed what like this idea. I guess this idea they were toying around with in that movie, where it's at the end of the movie when Spider-Man is fighting Venom, and he's like slamming those poles on the ground and creating the like really loud sound waves to kind of disrupt the symbiote suit. And there's a point where what they were originally thinking of doing, because there's this part where like the symbiote suit peels away and you see Topher Grace right there kind of like screaming, and you see them like separating a little bit. They were originally thinking of doing it where when that symbiote suit peels back, there's just a skull there. Like the symbiote had like devoured Eddie Brock completely at that point. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's a little grim. I'm glad they didn't do that. That's a little too dark. You know what I'm saying, man? That's a woof.
That is I mean that like I think cuz that's Raimi was the director for those.
Hmm.
I think all
Hmm.
three of those. Yeah, I don't know. Sam Raimi though, like he's not afraid to get like a little kind of like
That's true.
Gritty. I mean, have you
Yep.
ever watched like any of the Evil Dead movies?
So I've never watched any of the Evil Dead stuff. However, um, I did watch the new Doctor Strange, which he directed, and
Mm-hmm.
this other movie that he directed and I think he wrote called Drag Me to Hell. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is really gross, really morbid in parts, but you're also throwing some humor in there. So I don't know how to take any of this, man. I'm feeling really confused right now.
The
So
Evil
that's all
Dead
I know.
trilogy, so like Evil Dead 2 is basically Evil Dead 1 but done better.
Okay. Okay.
And cuz Evil Dead 1 is just like it's such a like Bruce Campbell is just like he is like king of the B flicks. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's they're a little scary, but they're more campy than anything
Okay.
else. Like I think they're kind of fun, but I don't know. This is also like the time of year when I don't do spooky stuff like
Hmm.
most of the year, but there is something that's really like appropriate about this time of year where
Yeah.
like the leaves are kind of like it's getting colder. It's like the
Hmm.
earth is sort of going to sleep a little bit. It's
Hmm.
like or creation rather is sort of going to sleep, the autumnal vibe and it's like but yeah, Evil Dead's
Yeah.
fun. I'll that's a pre end of the show Reco. It's like, hey, like if you don't mind horror, like Evil Dead's cool. Like Evil
Fair
Dead
enough.
2 is the best one. Army of
Okay.
Darkness is also kind of fun. Um Also caveat like asterisk on that real quick. I haven't
Hmm.
watched either of those in like 20 years. So like
Okay. So you just remember the best parts. Everything else that's like bad
I
or
just
questionable, you're like, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's like I just remember like they were fun and we just laughed a lot and like there were like a couple like scary moments or whatever, but there was also just some stuff where it was like me and my buddies were watching it and we were just like, this is so dumb, but it's awesome. Um,
Fair enough, man. Fair
so
enough. Well, Sojourner, the answer to your question is obviously, obviously,
emo Toby.
emo Toby. Obviously, it's Toby Maguire,
I
hundred
amend
percent.
my answer.
There you go, man.
It's definitely emo
Just
Toby.
saying, the whole little thing that he does.
Dude, and like
My favorite.
the swoop, like
Oh yeah,
the
dude.
slick back
Oh
swoop thing that or like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that emo
It's
Toby.
like the Power Glove. It's so bad, I love it. I
Yeah,
just,
it's so bad.
it's so bad. It's so bad. But Sojourner, thank you for writing in. Let's get into the show proper with a little bit of what have we been playing. Nate, man, tell the dear listeners something you've been playing. Some of these, you know what? I'm just gonna let you talk about them. One of them I'm
All
looking at
right.
like, what is that? But yeah, I'll let you talk about it.
So the sort of like the one that you're probably not like looking at all sideways and wondering like what the heck is Ghost of Tsushima. Um, I had started this a while ago and never finished it because
Hmm.
it was just like it's a big game, like it's an open
Oh
world big.
yeah.
It's awesome, but I have like the energy for big stuff like maybe once or twice. Like I can do it like once or twice a year,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to be in the
and
mood for it.
yeah, and so I've kind of doubled back, and I'm kind of getting back into the swing of Ghost of Tsushima because it's just great, and I've never beaten it, and I'm kind of like I'm trying to do like a completion run where it's like I
Okay.
sort of hit everything. I want to
Yeah.
get the platinum, and because then I just want to be done with it and just sort of like put it away. I'll do
Sure.
like the Iki Island stuff, and I'll just like be done and walk
Hmm.
away from it. The other one, the one that you're kind of going like, what? So every October, Josh and I over on the breakdown, we play a spooky game.
Hmm.
Like we did Dead Space one year, we did Resident
Hmm.
Evil 4. I think Resident
Okay.
Evil 2, the remake one year was one of our spooky
Okay.
games. I think last year we did Doki Doki Literature Club.
Oh,
Um,
jeez. Okay.
yeah. But this year we actually we had plans to do something, and then Josh has had like a really crazy year, and I've had a pretty hectic year as well. And so one of our friends and patrons suggested that we play this game called Faith: The Unholy Trinity. And I know, like, first thing people are like what? This
Wait a
is a
minute.
Christian podcast. And I'm like, yeah. Well, the guy who made this game is apparently a Christian. Um,
Okay.
and there's a video essay by Wendigoon he talks a little bit about this game. And so anyways, we're playing it, and it's sort of this old school Commodore 64 looking kind of, maybe like Atari-esque kind of looking game. And it is just throwing like super creepy vibes. Like, this is a game that on its like surface, I'm like, I started playing it, was like, there's no way like this is going to be nearly as like spooky. There were a couple times the night I was playing it, I was thoroughly unsettled. The first night I played it.
Man,
So
I gotta tell you, people that are watching the video have probably seen my face do all sorts of emotions right now. I'm looking at I'm watching the trailer on Steam, and man, yeah, the Commodore stuff, I'm definitely feeling that takes me out of it. But some of the
yeah.
so, okay, holy crap,
Yeah,
dude,
dude.
you played this? This is freaking me out.
So there's 3 chapters. I wrapped up chapter 1 the other night. And it's not a long game. Like, I think for all 3 chapters, they're saying like maybe like 6 hours total. So, I've got to play through the other 2, but yeah, it is creepy. Like, it is like vibes. It's like, just not like it's
I
hard for me to describe it. Like, it's like it freaks me out a little bit.
I just saw a priest with a shotgun, and it and it took me back to the early days of TRG, where for one episode we like made our own games, and one of them was called Shotgun Messiah, and that just made me think of it for some reason. Oh man, dude, I'm gonna be honest. This is trippy. This is unsettling. I
Mm-hmm.
want to play it.
It's it's kind of like one of those things. I'm like, player beware. It, like I said, chapter 1, like, it took me like maybe an hour or 2 to get through.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think it. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's 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 really kind of like, it's just, it's such an interesting game because like it's, I mean, on its surface, it should not be as spooky as it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it really weirds me out a little bit. And but yeah, I'm kind of interested in it. Like, it's one of those things that's kind of catching me a little off guard.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not done with it, so I'm not really like sure where I land on it. But you know,
sure.
for listeners of TRG, like, the end of this month, Josh and I are going to do an episode on it. So you guys are more than welcome to check out my thoughts then. But it's like, what, that first night I was like, it was like very much one of those where it's like, I'm not really sure I want to turn all my lights off. Like, I don't
Yeah,
feel good about things right now, which is okay. It's okay to be there in
sure,
that space every once in a
sure.
while. So,
Dude. So I love Steam, right? It's great. Specifically the Steam reviews. Because I feel like I need to do a YouTube video on just reading nothing but Steam reviews for games. But the 2 reviews that have stuck out about this game for me is this one here by Jasterino that says Bible gets a game adaptation. And then, and then, and then this one from Nihilistic Angel that says my favorite part of faith was when John said I don't even know what this means, but was when John said it's faithing time and faithed all over the demons. Like, does he get like what? I don't know, man. This
so
is
mechanically, what I will tell people is, this is mechanically, all there really is like, you walk around and you have a crucifix, and you can
okay.
play it with keyboard or controller. And so it's like, you just walk around, and occasionally this thing will like pop out of the woods, and like,
Mm-hmm.
you point your little guy towards it and you hold up your crucifix until it runs away. And then
Okay.
there's a bunch of stuff after that as well. But mechanically, it is not the most complicated or complex game I've ever played, but
Okay.
it is as far as tone goes, it just like, yeah, it
Fair
just
enough, man.
it's wrecking me.
Well, I just added it to my wish list, so it's there for me on Steam, and I will pick it up at some point and dive into it and see how it goes. I'm, I'm real curious now, man.
I think it's worth a playthrough so far. Like, I'm like,
Okay,
it's short. It's kind of like, it's interesting. Yeah, it's worth a
fair
playthrough.
enough, man. Fair enough. Well, that is Faith, the Unholy Trinity. Well, that as far as my words are hard. That's
Words are
gonna
hard.
bring me over to what I'm playing, and your boy is 50 hours now into Trails of Cold Steel 4, and I'm starting to feel it, Nate.
A little bit of
I'm start
fatigue.
I'm starting to feel the fatigue
Hmm.
because a lot of the formula stuff is starting, like the repetition of a lot of things is starting to settle in, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really feeling this anymore. I like the
Hmm.
characters, I like the setting, I want to know what happens next. At the same time, I'm like, I would rather be doing other things at this point. So I'm starting to really kind of slow roll it and kind of pump the
Have
brakes
Have you played all the other like Trails games up to this point? And you've just been like going at that like for a while now.
for over a
Might be
year.
time to like hit the pause button, dude, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like put a little bit of space in between
Yeah.
you and these games, and then come back to it
Yeah.
because
That's
it could.
kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'll still chip away at it a little bit here and there, do a couple things here and there, but it's kind of good timing because of Spider-Man 2 and
Hmm.
Super Mario Wonder coming out. I'm like, okay, clearly Trails is about to, like, the brakes are going to get slammed hard on this game because I'm going to go play these other games because I'm not going to miss either one of those two games at all. But but yeah, I'm still enjoying Trails of Cold Steel 4 for the most part. But like I said, that fatigue is definitely settling in. I mean, after you've played, is this the 10th game I've played in the series? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. This is the ninth game I played in the series. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling it.
They're all like 30 or 40 hours a pop each, at least, right?
Definitely, at least, man.
At bare minimum.
Bare minimum. All the Cold Steel games have been over 50 hours for me, and it's
Oh,
like, yeah, this is really settling in, man. It's definitely taking a while, and this one's supposed to be the longest one. And I'm looking at the guide, and I'm looking at my time clock, and I'm like, yeah, I probably easily have another 50 plus hours to go before I'm done with the game. Dang it!
oh man.
So
And when you get to a point with a game like that too, like where you just like the like you're almost like, am I having fun kind of thing.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's like, dude, just at the very least, it's time to just like,
yeah,
pump the brakes, take a little bit of a
absolutely.
breather.
And a lot of people were telling me that that comment on the YouTube videos or showed up for the last stream. They're like, "Dude, you really need to pace yourself because this game." There's several people actually that told me that when they got to this game and they were playing it, they started feeling the burnout, and so it took them a
Mhm.
while to beat it. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm thinking I'm not going to be able to soldier through this one like I had previously thought. It's probably better to just chip away at it in parts and let myself get distracted by other games for a little bit and go on from there." But I will say it was kind of easy though to get distracted because we started playing Marvel Midnight Suns, me and a few
Mhm.
other patrons, and I'm still playing that. And man, I met with the some of the patrons this past Sunday, and we're talking about it. And the more that I talk about the game and look at it and kind of go through its systems and discuss it, I'm like, this game is surprisingly, I think I might have said this in the last episode too. It's surprisingly good. Like, I'm a
Mhm.
little upset that I slept on it so much because, I like Marvel characters. It's got some of the characters that either haven't heard of or haven't seen much of, that are some of my favorites. And I'm just like, this is really cool. The DLC with Deadpool and Morbius and them, really cool. Their move
Does
sets are
Morbius
great.
say it's Morbin time?
Not yet. Not yet, but I'm hoping it's coming soon because I would love for that to be a thing where he just says it's Morbin time and then he just wipes the whole arena out of enemies.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's
But
like
yeah, it's
his super or something.
yes. One of his super, like, three power heroic cards or something. But yeah, it's cool. I'm really impressed with it. It's not as complex or unforgiving as XCOM is, which is great, but it can be as difficult or as easy as you want the game to be. And you can play as your favorite heroes. You can customize the characters. One of my favorite things about the game, again, I've said this, I think on the show before. Anytime you allow me to customize my character or customize my room or do something to that degree, I
Mm-hmm.
will dump hours into that aspect alone. And when you're chilling in the Abbey, you're just hanging out with the other heroes. Um, there's certain costumes they can wear. And so I was like, let me look at Deadpool's costumes because I know his are going to be hilarious. Right now, Deadpool is walking around just chilling at the Abbey with a rainbow tie-dye unicorn t-shirt on and a pair of jeans and his mask on. And it's it's so funny every time I
He's just
walk by him.
that's because Deadpool is a vibe, dude.
Yeah,
He's a
dude.
vibe.
He is.
He
He is.
knows what he's about.
Yeah.
He's about burritos and breaking the fourth wall and tie-dye unicorn shirts.
That was my favorite thing is when he joins your team, he's like, "Look, Ma, I'm gonna be DLC." And then you ask him about it later, and he's like, "Don't worry about it." And then there's other funny stuff where like you can ask him why he doesn't take his mask off, and he's like, "I can give you a lore specific reason, or I can just tell you the honest truth, which is there wasn't enough in the budget, so this mask is staying on." I'm just like, uh
Well,
this is money well spent.
and he like his character will definitely afford you that type of humor because of
Oh
just
yeah.
like again the breaking the fourth wall and stuff like that. So
Yeah, man. It's good. It's a good
so
time.
yeah, I've been curious about that one. Because like Firaxis, like XCOM and XCOM 2 are both really good games,
Yeah.
but just absolutely brutal. Um, and have you done basically any of the dating simulator stuff? Because I've heard it's like there's like the hero sort of side of things, but then
Mhm.
there's like this whole like relationship building thing too.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you can you can spend some time in between missions and talking to the different heroes and kind of, not like going on dates, but like hanging out with them and stuff. And I haven't
Now
really.
you're going on dates, dude. Come on.
I hope not, because me and Ghost Rider were hanging out poolside, and I hope that's not a date because that's awkward. But I did notice there was a little bit of a spark between Blade and Captain Marvel, and I'm like, this is something I did not expect, but I'm here for it. Let's see where this goes because knowing Blade, this is either well, no, it's gonna be weird
This
and it's
this
gonna be
this
funny.
will end poorly.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because Blade's so stoic and serious, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll have to report back on the next episode of the podcast. But
Yeah, next episode,
yeah.
dude, you gotta give the listeners like basically I like just for me, I'm gonna need like
Okay.
romantic life updates from
Okay.
Midnight Suns.
Okay.
Like
I'll let you know.
I'm gonna need to know who's shipping with who
Okay.
and all that.
Okay. I can definitely provide that for you, man. I can definitely
I
provide that
appreciate
for
that.
you. And I'll steer clear of texting you about it on Sunday night so that we can watch 90 Day Fiance in peace and
I
get your
appreciate
fill
that. I appreciate that.
Oh man. Anyway, but yeah, so that has been what we have been playing. So let's kind of kick things over to the news. There's a normally Micah handles this part of the show, but because Micah's sitting it out, he's playing Spider-Man 2, having a good time. It's left to me, and so I try to pull some things that I think our listeners would be interested in, while just getting some of the more disturbing stuff in here as well. Keeping it in theme with October and spooky season, but we'll get to that here a little bit later on. Earlier this year, Jim Ryan retired from, or announced he was going to retire.
Mhm.
Resign from PlayStation, and he's not the only one that is retiring. It was recently that Pete Hines of Bethesda is retiring as well. In a post that he posted on Twitter, it says, and by the way, all the news sources that I'm getting is coming from Video Games Chronicle for this episode. But he announced, and it says, quote, "After 24 years, I've decided my time at Bethesda Softworks has come to an end. I am retiring and will begin an exciting new chapter of my life, exploring interests and passions donating my time where I can, and taking more time to enjoy life. This is not a decision I came to easily or quickly, but after an amazing career culminating in the incredible launch of Starfield, it feels like the time is right. And Bethesda actually put out their own statement that reads, quote, Pete's public presence was only a small part of his role at Bethesda, although the way he represented us carried over into the values he nurtured here: authenticity, integrity, and passion. His contributions have been integral in building Bethesda and its family of studios into the world-class organization that it is today. His vision helped push us forward, and his hard work inspired us. We're thankful for his 24 years of leadership and wish him the best in this next chapter. We'll miss you, Pete. End quote. Now, for those of us that have been following the game industry, and we watch a lot of the conferences, the streams, and all that stuff. Pete was usually one of those people who would kind of come out and do the presenting and do a lot of talking before handing things over to Todd Howard. And so he would kind of be that public face and shaking hands and rubbing shoulders with people. But man, Nate, I want to get your opinion, man. How do you feel about Pete Hines? I mean, 24 years is a long time. That's a heck of a legacy right there.
Yeah. And I mean, like, especially coming from such a storied studio, like, whether like Bethesda games just aren't really my vibe. Like, I like Skyrim. I like those games. They're fine.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not, I don't have like like, I don't know. I don't have overwhelming feelings, but I think like he has been such like a big part of Bethesda for especially like the last decade. He's been, like you said, one of the public faces. And I don't know, like to me it's one of those things, like I think getting Starfield through the gate or out the door kind of thing, and it's like go out on a high note and maybe
Mm-hmm.
explore some other options. 24 years with a very very like successful development team,
Yeah.
studio, whatever, like, yeah, dude, like I don't I don't know. This It's like it probably sucks for Bethesda in a way, but I'm like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
go out on like go out on a high note, dude. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
like and like watch a bunch of Bob Ross videos and like learn to paint or something. I don't know. Like do what you want, man. Like
Hold up. This is the second time you brought up Bob Ross, man. Have you been on a Bob Ross kick here
I
lately?
mean, like happy little trees, bro. I'm just Bob Ross is a good time. Like
Okay.
just
Okay.
I don't know. But
I don't.
I it's not like I'm even watching like a ton of Bob Ross. It's just like for whatever reason he just hangs out in my head. Like like tells me about his happy little trees.
I
And
don't
it's
know,
like
man. I just imagine you going out and doing your thing as you do every day, and just you walk by a tree, and then you look at it, and you hear Bob Ross going, "That's a happy little tree right there."
have a little
And
tree.
it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Anyway, P Hines,
Yeah.
thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
for your service.
yeah, like, dude, well
Yeah,
done. Like, glad to see you finish sort of in a strong position.
yeah,
Like,
man.
you can go out with your head held high. Because I mean, and it's not to bag on anybody, but how many people have we seen? Like, obviously Jim Ryan's kind of going out on a high note, but like
Hmm.
the the woman that was running 343 for a while, like was it
Mm.
Bonnie? No, not Bonnie. I can't
Oh
remember her
man,
name.
I can't remember either.
But
I
it's
could
like,
probably look it up real quick.
there's so many execs that sometimes, like, I mean, even Bobby Kotick. There are all these dudes where it's like all this like weird kind of like crap, like tarnishing the legacy. And like
Hmm.
Pete's going out like, and there's no major scandal. He's just like, no, I'm good. Like, I did my thing and it's time to move on. And like, it's like, salute, sir. Well done.
Nate, you want to know something interesting?
What's that?
We're sitting here talking about Bob Ross, having some fun. The head of 343 that left, her name is Bonnie Ross.
Oh, it was Bonnie Ross. Okay.
Any correlation? I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of relation
Illegitimate child. I,
there.
that's not nice. That's not nice. I shouldn't cast aspersions on
What the heck,
parentage.
Nate?
Sorry, sorry. I don't
With
know.
that, with that, let's pivot to the next one.
Sorry. I go dark places sometimes.
I noticed, man, you're keeping it in the theme of spooky season, but let's kind of pivot here and talk about this next one coming out of Xbox. Who anyone that has been following this podcast has been following the gaming news for a while is very, very well aware of the merger between Xbox and Activision Blizzard, which finally completed its $69 billion acquisition last week or 2 weeks ago, depending on when you're listening to this. And now Xbox has a bevy, a wide library, a vast array of video games, but just brands, just all sorts of IP
Yeah,
underneath their supervision now.
they're
And
sitting on just a massive vault of IP right now, just based on this acquisition. I mean, obviously you've got like the big hitters, and it's like with Blizzard, Activision, and King. So you've got Candy Crush is going to be
yep.
like that's going to be obviously on the King side of things. That's the reason they went. They're gonna. This is going to be one of the big pushes for them, like big tools for them to push into mobile. But then on Blizzard side, you've got World of Warcraft, you've got Diablo, you've got um, all this stuff sort of, that is, well, so you've got Warcraft, you got WoW, you have StarCraft,
Overwatch.
you've got all of the Blizzard properties, and all of those are fairly big hitters. Although Diablo 4 it's been interesting. And you and I talked about it in Talk TRG. I think the game is still in a really good spot. I really like it, but a lot of people have dropped off of it. And again, I don't know what people are expecting. But
Probably good support for their game.
I think there's been, well, I'm not going to go down this rabbit trail. I'm not, that's a trap in the words of Admiral Akbar. But, and then you've got Activision, and Activision is really just like, dude. So yes, obviously there's Call of Duty, but there's so much stuff in there too. Like the Skylanders stuff is an Activision property.
Yep.
And the article mentions this stuff too. It's like Tony Hawk, Rock Band or Guitar Hero, one of those two is like part of that. And there's so many like legacy products and IP sort of locked up in Activision's back catalog that, even the fact that like Phil is kind of like hinting in the article about like, well, hey, maybe we'll revisit some of these. And I'm like, no, that'd be kind of sick, because that's actually a lot of people. When the talk of this first started, a lot of people were like, hey, maybe they'll start bringing back a lot of these games that we loved and kind of got shut away because of the Call of Duty machine. So maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
and speaking of that, let me read some of these quotes here, because one of the things I wanted to bring up was Phil Spencer went on the official Xbox podcast to talk about this merger and how he plans on stewarding or being a steward of all of these different properties now. And so I'm going to read this fairly lengthy quote from, again, an article posted on Video Games Chronicle. That says, quote, the amount of franchises, this is Phil Spencer speaking. So he says, quote, the amount of franchises that we now have in our portfolio is kind of inspiring. It's daunting. I feel that we have to be a great custodian for the content that we touch. These are memories from people on different platforms and different decades. And I want to make sure that when we're going back and visiting something, that we do it with our complete ability, a motivated team that wants to go work on something and make a difference, not just create something for financial gain or create something for a PR announcement and not deliver on the product. So I'm going to start with the teams and what they're passionate about. And that's why I'm excited to go on these studio visits, and then we'll look at it. And then he continues on here that says, quote, I think we've done an okay job as Xbox. I don't think we've done an A+ job on looking at our franchises and revisiting them. It's always a trade-off between what do you do that's new and going back and doing something. I do think with Game Pass, we have the ability to maybe pick a couple of franchises every year and almost do a revisited. I just made up that term, so it's not a brand, it's not on a box. But I tease about things like Hexen just because I remember playing it as a kid. I have no plan for that, but I do think when you look across all of the franchises that are part of our teams, there's an opportunity for us to go back, even if it's just to recognize the moment and what those things meant in gaming's history and do something right with it. Make it available to people through Game Pass. I think there's an opportunity. There's not a plan for that, but there's an opportunity. And so he's very careful to like not say or like, be like, this is what we're doing. But he's saying like, hey, there's a lot of things we could do. There's a lot of opportunities and we're looking at it and we want to be good stewards of that. And Dorian actually wrote in that ties in with this. You can write into the show on patreon.com. Dorian Taylor writes in and says, personally, I thought it was hilarious that the ABK announcement was made official on Friday the 13th. Nice. Phil is starting to show his ruthless side. It would be crazy if somehow they decided to release the old Activision Spider-Man games onto Game Pass on Spider-Man 2 Day. I got to say, I'm liking this new, more aggressive Xbox. I mean, well, if you just acquired a big publisher, I mean, I'd be walking with a little bit of a pep in my step too. I'd be feeling pretty confident. It's, what's that phrase? Walk tall, carry a big stick, or something like that.
Walk softly and carry a big stick.
That's it. I feel like that's where Phil Spencer is. I don't know why, but that phrase always makes me think
that dude don't know how to walk softly, man. Like he can't help but advertise on freaking social media. Like
that's true.
I mean, that's Phil, true. Yeah, he puts off those nice vibes, but I mean, he's a businessman.
Yep. That's what I was gonna say. He knows what he's doing, man. And at this point, I mean, I was like, man, what games does Activision actually own? And I was kind of looking through the list, and I'm like, oh wow, man, Xbox has a lot, because we've talked about the big ones earlier, but I think one of the other ones that I definitely want to touch on is Beanox is part of Activision. They're a subsidiary. That studio is responsible for some of the best Spider-Man games pre Sony Insomniac making the one on PlayStation. Currently, you have Web of Shadows, you have Shattered Dimensions, you have oh gosh, there's a few others. I think Ultimate Spider-Man they made too, which was GameCube, Xbox 360 era. And so man, just even thinking about how they might even do some superhero stuff or use that to create a superhero themed game. You have High Moon Studios, who's responsible for the Transformers games, specifically War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, which are probably two of the best Transformers games out currently. I think we mentioned Guitar Hero a little bit earlier, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I mean, it's kind of
1 and 2, dude.
Prototype 1 and 2 is another one. I mean, dude, it's crazy. And them even Phil even bringing up Skylanders a couple times in this interview. It's like, dude, what are they gonna do, man? Again, he doesn't make any promises, but just thinking through, what could be done, man. It kind of leads me to ask this question here: is there anything that we hope they do? Is there anything that we hope that they revive in some sort of way, or maybe we see on Game Pass?
I mean, we got the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remasters. I think it'd be really cool, and we know that Tony Hawk 3 and 4 remaster or remake or whatever was supposed to be in the works. Be really cool if we got that. To me personally, I did like Prototype. Like having Prototype, maybe getting like that or like a reboot, because like I think one of the things that Xbox is lacking is like a superhero style game, and Prototype was basically like a superhero game. It was like you're kind of like this Venom-ish Hulk kind of character, and just I don't know, it could be cool. I'm just saying, like I think that's a bit of weak point. Activision owns Geometry Wars. And Geometry Wars is a rip, dude. Like
that's a great. I think me and Michael were talking about that. We were talking about in the last episode in our Xbox 360 episode. Yeah,
man. Like Geometry Wars is a great time. So it's like they've got like a lot of really cool stuff. And I think even like looking sort of at when they were in that article when they mentioned like Skylanders and stuff and the Guitar Hero games, like they were talking about it and they said like you know there's kind of like before you play the game or before you see it, there's like, who's going to buy this extra thing to like plug into their machine?
Mm-hmm.
And then it happens, and then it's
It
like
works, yeah.
it's everybody's going to buy the freaking cheap plastic
Yeah.
guitar to plug into their
Yeah.
machine because the game is awesome. So I just kind of I I want to be hopeful, but I mean, like, and I'm not trying to like not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but I think like I think Phil's being pretty generous when he's like, we've been okay with like taking care of our studios. And I'm like, dude, no, you kind of haven't been. Like the track
Mm-hmm.
record has been like pretty abysmal as a general rule. Like
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to take shots here, but I think what one of the fair criticisms is you have like your big properties like Halo Infinite is in an okay state now, but
Yeah.
on launch, like everybody's like the single player's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But the multiplayer is a disaster. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have to go back and you're like, well, this feature we told you there's going to be on-screen co-op. We're not doing that anymore. We told you this was going to be here. We're not doing that anymore. And it's and taking 6 months or whatever to put forge mode or whatever into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, and granted that stuff comes out and it's awesome and everybody's like, this is really good. But I'm just saying like that's one of your like flagship titles and you have not
Yeah.
shepherded that product well.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm not saying they're going to poop the bed. What I am
Mm-hmm.
saying is that like, I think we need to be like realistic. We need to maybe temper expectations
Yeah.
and really just sort of be cautiously optimistic here, hope for the best,
Mm-hmm.
but understand that historically, like they just haven't done a great job with studio management.
Yeah.
And so maybe they've got those kinks worked out, like, but we'll see.
Yeah. That's something that I think, looking at their track record, and I mean there is no there's no, I don't know what the correct phrase is, but there's no getting around it. I mean that is their history up to this point. But and maybe this is a little too hopeful of me, but I would think that going through what they went through earlier this year with Redfall
Mm-hmm.
really kicked them in the pants hard enough to where they're like, okay, we got to get our crap together. Like this cannot happen again. And thankfully, I almost said
Starfield.
Starfall,
Yeah.
Starfield did launch pretty well.
Mhm.
It didn't like set the world on fire that I thought it would, but it's still fine. I don't think it's really a game for me personally. I think I'm right there with you, Nate. Like Bethesda games are fine, but they're not really my thing, so to speak,
Mhm.
anymore. Um, but people are loving Starfield, and I think it's a good step. It's a good sign of what's to come, and I like that. I mean, again, I kind of take things that Phil says with a grain of salt, but I think he probably when he saw like how many games there were, and he finally got that, I was like, oh crap, like we really can't afford to screw this up. So I mean, it's one of those things where you've been handed the keys to a literal kingdom size
Mhm.
of just games and IP that yeah, you definitely want to be a good steward of that, and I hope they do, and I hope they treat it well. I think what would be really impressive is like what Dorian said. It would be hilarious if tomorrow we open up Twitter or Xbox or whatever, and we see those Activision Spider-Man games on there on Game Pass,
Mhm.
or just even in a couple months, we see the Transformers games come back in some way, shape, or form. And man, it would just, or even they announce like a new Transformers game. I know there's a lot of logistics that go behind the scenes with that, a lot of
Yeah.
licensing and talks and
Yeah.
all that. But I mean, there are games that are in their possession that people have been clamoring for either sequels or remakes. And it's like, if you give the people what they want and you handle it well,
Mhm.
it's kind of a home run. I'm going to be honest. If they make a new Guitar Hero and it's good, like done, dude. I'm the last Guitar Hero they put out, the Guitar Hero Live, sucked. Me and my wife hated it. It was so just bad. Some cool ideas,
Mhm.
terrible implementation. If they can get that back together and do it well. Oh
And
my gosh, dude.
there's like a thing where like basically rhythm style games, because that's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
They do well.
Yeah.
Like
Beat
Beat
Saber is
Saber.
still super
Yep.
popular.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, like if you could do like a freaking VR mode for
Oh my gosh.
freaking Guitar Hero,
Yeah.
that would be pretty cool, man. Like
Yeah.
or I don't know. Yeah. I loved Guitar Hero and Guitar Hero 2.
No, same here.
Like love them.
Yeah.
Um and it would like I'd love to be able to play those games again. Like the other night we were I was actually jamming like my wife didn't know, but I was playing a bunch of classic rock, but it was all like stuff that I had played on Guitar Hero. And I was like
Nice.
and I was just like I don't know, like that yeah, I want to be hopeful here. I'm just
Yeah.
like I'm also trying to like temper expectations and
Yeah,
just
no,
say
I get
like
it.
where it's like let's not like get too crazy here. Like
Yeah.
I think like sometimes people like I have a reputation as being a bit of a Sony pony.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the thing is like it's not that I'm rooting against Microsoft. It's just Microsoft for so long hasn't done anything that really appeals to me. And
Mm-hmm.
now they have an opportunity to like get my attention in a positive way.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, don't crap the bed. Like don't do this thing where it's like you're at like you're at yards, you've got like 2 yards, third down kind of like thing where it's
Okay.
like all you got to do is like push it a little bit and it's don't just don't screw it up. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're set up to do really well as long as they don't mismanage their properties. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Like,
Man. Well, speaking of people handling things well, let's talk about a studio that definitely did not handle something well
uh-oh.
at all here.
Uh-oh.
So we all remember the infamous Lord of the Rings Gollum that came out earlier
Oh,
this
you
year.
mean the Tommy Pickles game?
The Tommy Pickles game, yes. The Tommy Pickles Simulator. The worst rated game of the year so far. Well, that game has now been dethroned as the worst rated game, also the most hated game, because this new game that came out here recently, last Tuesday, called Skull Island Rise of Kong, is not good. It is not good. This is a $49, I'm sorry, $49.99 game on the PlayStation Store. If you're a PS Plus member, you can get 25% off, but don't do it, man. This game released, people picked it up because again, there's fans of King Kong, there's fans of Godzilla, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Shout out to y'all, respect. I'm more of a Godzilla guy, but that's just me. But people picked up this game and started sharing what this game looks like on Twitter, and oh my goodness. I don't know how you release a game. Actually, you know what? No, after Lord of the Rings Gollum, I know how you release a game in the state. You
I
just
don't
don't
know,
care and you want
man.
money.
Dude, like listen, Gollum was busted and it did not like really it was very obviously like just kind of a trash fire of a game.
Yeah.
But like watched the some of the because I read through the article and stuff and I watched some of those trailers and there's
Mm-hmm.
that one where it's just like instead of like there's supposed to be like this animated sequence and they just like
Mm-hmm.
throw in that clip art or
It's just
whatever.
it's just a static image. Yeah.
And I was like, nah, dog, that ain't it. That ain't it, man. Like
I get.
I
I guess
could
I
beg.
should say. Yeah, it was something this egregious. I'm watching some other videos right now, and I may try and splice them in to the video on YouTube. Yeah, I don't know how you say, you know what? This is okay. Let's put this out. People will buy this. People will love it, and it'll be good. But no, this is so bad. Like,
I mean, for the listeners, like I definitely recommend you guys check out these videos. Like
There will be a link in your show notes to the article that has them all in here.
it's terrible. Like this stuff looks like everybody was bagging on Mortal Kombat on Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Like this looks the graphically, this game is operating at a level far below that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it's actually running graphics, like if not just like splashing like static images and stuff like that. And then it's just like, I don't know, man. And I think like I'm just gonna like I'm gonna read from the article because I watched these trailers, and there's a statement that Game Mail makes about itself on its website where it says, and I'm just quoting the article here. Game Mill, according to its website, has a proven track record for leveraging the equity of some of the world's most beloved brands and working with developers to nimbly bring to life games that delight diehard and casual gamers alike. With a veteran lead team, we know how to navigate the landscape of licensors, developers, and consumers, and have proven time and time again an ability to deliver hit games on time, in scope, and on budget. What?
What's your budget? $100?
So they've made
This is
games,
I can't.
dude.
I
I want
can't.
to know like who, like, listen, this, like, and Game Mill is like, obviously they're like kind of like a C tier developer. They aren't like a major studio. They work on licensed games. They did a licensed game on Cobra Kai, GI Joe, Big Hero 6, Frozen, uh and Hotel Transylvania. Like that's some of the bigger titles, like properties that they've worked with. None of those were really bangers. Like I googled some of them, and like
Oh,
none of those games were really bangers. They were all sort of like middle of the road, kind of generic licensed games. Like this is a studio that is mid at best, and this is like, dude, this thing got a 3 on IGN, I think, which is basically like this game is unplayable. Like like it
dude.
plays, but this is not good. This is like this game functions, but it is not fun to play, and you should not play it. Like 1 or 2 is like this game is just busted. It doesn't even work, kind of thing. Um,
I'm
it's
uh I'm on their website right now looking at the games they've made. And Nerf Legends is sitting on here. And I remember that game doing very poorly when it released. But not only is that on their games page, there is also, everyone remembers this game, I think, or maybe people have forgotten about it. Nickelodeon All Star Brawl is one of the games
mm,
that they've made. That when that game released, none of the characters had voice acting. And they had to go back in and patch that in like a couple months later. And dude, this is bad. I
I'm
don't
just
know.
yeah,
Uh,
it's like I said, this is like a mid tier kind of like studio. It's just like they're probably good for like, you know,
Nothing.
they're good
No,
for
dude, I
like,
don't know what they're good for at this point, man.
well, it's like they do the Rapala Fishing Pro games, and I think those are fairly like well received. Um, I'm just like I'm saying, like this is like, but this is like abysmal, and it's like
This
I
is
didn't know
bad.
that they did that Nerf All Stars game or whatever, because like
Yeah.
yeah, that's like one of the lowest rated games of all time.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
that's
That
like,
is bad.
so it's just, but like this is something special. Like
Yeah.
this is a special kind of like gross.
It's a
Um,
special kind of turd that needs to be seen to be believed, that's for sure. But with that being said, dear listeners, a link to everything we talk about on this episode will be in your show notes. So you can go check these check these things out. You want to talk about spooky season and getting scared? Go watch some of the gameplay from
well,
this game
it's
here.
like looking at the character models and everything else too. Like this is like tech that just looks like, I mean, old. This looks
Yeah.
like not a last gen game. This looks like maybe PS3, Xbox
Mhm.
360 era like
Yeah.
game.
Like mid PS2 to late PS2 to early PS3, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's
wow.
pretty something.
Yeah.
It's something.
Yep. Thanks, Game Mill, for redeeming Lord of the Rings Gollum. But speaking of some good games that you can actually play, I did want to highlight this because I'm like, some of our listeners, primarily play on Game Pass, or you're signed on the PlayStation Plus extra premium tiers, and so you're taking advantage of that library of games to play whatever it is you want to play. And man, so some new games got announced. I'm sure some people are excited for what's on PlayStation. But I want to cover Game Pass first because part of them getting Activision is now they can put some of these games on Game Pass. And so they've got some new games that you can play, I think, pretty much by the time that you're listening to this episode. You have games like a Dragon Ishin that you can play on cloud, console, or PC. You can also play F1 Manager 2023 and Cities Skylines 2, which is going to be on PC on October 24th. So that one, probably around the time that you listen to this on public feeds, will be out. But the one I wanted to highlight that is coming to Game Pass on October 26th, just in time for Halloween, the Dead Space remake on cloud, PC, and Xbox Series
I
X
thought you
and
meant
S.
Mineko's Night Market.
Well, hey, that's on there too. For those that are interested, maybe a little, a little more of a cartoony kind of fun, spooky
You
thing.
went to hang out with some cats.
Some fun stuff. But for those that want the dismemberment and the blood and the gore, Dead Space remake is going to be on there as well. But I'm looking here. It says here in the article that the Dead Space remake is available as part of EA Play, which is included with Game Pass Ultimate and PC Game Pass, but not with Game Pass Core. So that's something to be aware of. And then there are some games that are leaving Game Pass on October 31st. I know we haven't really covered this, but there are two games I want to highlight on here one of them to at least be aware of. The other one, hopefully you can play by the time that it gets taken off on October 31st. The first one is Persona 5 Royal is leaving Game Pass on October 31st on cloud, console, and PC. And then Signalis is leaving on October 31st as well, which is a great survival horror game with a lot of throwbacks to Silent Hill, Resident Evil. Very much worth playing. It is a short game too, so any of you horror fans out there that haven't played Signalis yet and you've got Game Pass, definitely do so before October 31st. Otherwise, you'll have to pay for it, which is, I mean, it's still a good game. I think it's worth paying for too. But regardless, wanted to cover those. Some good picks coming your way for those of you on Xbox. And then over on PlayStation, in the game catalog for the extra and premium tier games, you've got Gotham Knights. Now, I'm not coming on here to knock Gotham Knights. I've bought Gotham Knights. I played the mess out of Gotham Knights, and you know what? It's okay.
Get those chicken nugs, bro.
Get those chicken. I forgot about that Kyle Bosman quote. Yeah, no, it's chicken nuggets. It's a good time. There's times you're like, is this okay? And then you keep playing like, no, this is fine. This is fine. It's a good time. So if you're on the extra premium tier, you have access to it. Definitely give it a shot. If you're not picking up Spider-Man, you're trying to save some money. I get it. You also have Disco Elysium, the final cut, which apparently is really good. I've tried to play it a couple times. It's not my kind of game, but I know some people that are into classic RPGs will love that. For the horror fans, you've got the Dark Pictures anthology House of Ashes, which you can totally skip and play Alien Isolation instead, because Alien Isolation is freaking awesome. Well worth playing. You also have Dead Island Definitive Edition and Outlast 2. And then for the sci-fi folks, you've got Elite Dangerous, Far Changing Tides. For you anime fans, you've got Gungrave Gore, Elder Souls, and for the cozy gamers, you've got Roki. I don't even know if this is really a cozy game, but it looks cozy just from the art style.
I don't know, man. There's it looks like tentacles and sea monsters and stuff coming out.
If you like the games where they're cozy 1 minute and deadly the next, check out Roki. And then, of course, you got a couple games coming to the Classics collection. The only one really, I think the only two games that are probably worthy of note are Tekken 6 and Ape Escape Academy. Soul Calibur, Broken Destiny, and IQ Final. I don't really No, I know about Soul Calibur, but I've never heard of that specific game itself. So yeah, it's probably not worth playing. But regardless, though, you've got some things to look forward to, and if you're not picking up anything new,
So
check those
Broken
out.
Destiny was originally a PSP game. So
Okay, that's why. That's why I'm not super familiar with the PSP era of games outside of thinking like Uncharted, Golden Abyss, and the God of War games that were on there. But anyway, with that being said, that ends our news segment. Let's get into the end of the show here with some of our write-ins from our patrons. And I think what I'm going to do is actually combine both of them into this one section here. But we're going to tackle... Yeah, we're going to tackle one. But we'll see. We'll see how I handle this. We'll see how I handle this.
Yeah, the two questions kind of run into each other a little bit.
Yeah. So let me read John Hannon's write-in first, and then I'll read Mandelbrot 86's write-in. And let's start with John Hannon, who says, as Christians, we've got a lot of freedom, and we're in many cases charged with managing that freedom and setting boundaries for ourselves. When it comes to the content in games, what are your boundaries? How are they formed? Are they something you've labeled for yourself ahead of time, or are they more along the lines of, I'll recognize it when I see it? And when a game crosses a boundary, and when a game crosses a boundary, what's your response? Now, I want to delve into that, but I also want to bring in Mandelbrot's question as well, so we can touch on that too and include that into the discussion here. So he writes in and says, I'm super psyched for Spider-Man 2 right now, but I heard some reviewers gushing about inclusivity in it in a way that makes me suspect this is referencing LGBT inclusion. I don't try to necessarily keep my kids in a bubble, but how do you feel we as Christians should navigate these kinds of topics as they start to become extremely prevalent in games? Now, this is kind of getting back to the core of what TRG is all about, and I mean, how we even approach games. And I know we typically outline our boundaries maybe once a year, once every other year or so. So I think we're definitely due for a revisit on this sort of thing. And Nate, I think it'll be good to have you in on this discussion too, because, it's just, you're part of another show, but you're still a Christian as well. And this is just going to be good to kind of get this discussion going. Now, I want to talk about Spider-Man 2 specifically at the start, and we'll kind of use this to kind of get into the other things about how we approach games. I have been avoiding Spider-Man 2 trailers, reviews, all that stuff like the plague. The less I know about this game going into it, the better. I don't want to know a single thing about it. I did have a villain ruin for me on Twitter earlier, which is my own fault. I hopped on Twitter, went to a specific account that I knew was probably going to be talking about it. That's my own fault. That being said, I'm even more excited to play, because I'm like, crap, didn't know that was going to be in the game. So I don't really know what this is, or I didn't know what this was referencing. And this is the one thing that I intentionally spoiled for myself, or I think I spoiled myself for it. And I got to be honest, from what I've read, if that's what's actually in the game, this is gonna rub people the wrong way, no matter how I say this, but I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It involves one character, and I'm not gonna say anything else beyond that. It's not Peter Parker, it's not Miles Morales. But again, maybe what I read wasn't even it. It could be something totally different. But based off what I read, I'm like, okay, well, that's it. It's and this is a thing that I think is a good springboard into just Christians in general engaging with video games. In the time that I've been doing this podcast for almost 9 years now, which is crazy to think about, something I've noticed about how Christians engage, not just video games, but entertainment as a whole, there's two kind of tendencies. There's two sides of the pendulum that we tend to swing. One is we see a little bit of stuff, like we hear about this, and we flip out. I'm not saying Mandelbrot's flipping out, but I'm just saying,
no.
You see this stuff, you flip out. I saw this a lot just within the former Facebook group, at least in the earlier time, or the earlier days of the group just starting out. And then you have people that are like that. Yeah, on the other side of the pendulum, you have people that go, well, why are you surprised that the world's acting like the world? Who cares? I feel like those are two sides of the spectrum, two extremes that are not helpful at all. We need to kind of come into the middle here and just look at it realistically. A lot of the
Yeah.
stuff, Nate, I'll kick it to you. I think you had something to say there.
Well, I mean, I do tend to be more of the world is going to do what the like, wretch is going to wretch, right? And
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I think the biggest thing is like the biggest rule of thumb, and it's not that your conscience is infallible, but
Mm-hmm.
it is a really good indicator. Like if you like default, like sort of just like my knee jerk reaction to a lot of this stuff, it's like if you are offended by something, don't play it.
Yeah.
Like if you have weird feelings about it, don't play it because that's
Mm-hmm.
usually an indicator that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Like not always, but like I would say like 4 out of 5 times, like you get the weirds about something, just bounce out.
Yeah.
Like these things exist in it. Like this is the kind of really cool thing about video games, right? And about all of leisure and recreation activities is that they're purely optional.
Yeah.
Recreation is a good thing. It is meant to restore us, to refresh us so that we can, go on and do the actual work of working for the kingdom, like being good neighbors, like loving
Mm-hmm.
and serving our church and our communities, right? Like that, like, so when recreation is doing that, but you are not obligated to consume it.
Yeah.
So if you're playing, like, I think about like when people were freaking out about like the trans issue in Last of Us Part 2. Um,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of people didn't even know who the trans character was.
Yeah. They thought
And
they knew, and
they
then it
thought they
turned out to be
knew.
this completely other character, and then everyone just kind of like they were like the proverbial person with the egg on their face. It's like, oh,
Yeah, and so there is that. Now there's also a thing where it's like I think some of these games we don't none of this stuff exists in a vacuum. So it's like you
hmm
were saying like there's like a middle ground. And I think like one of the things is I remember having a conversation with one of my best friends, a dude named Parker, and we were talking about Borderlands 3. And one of the DLCs in Borderlands 3, it's called Love and Tentacles. And it's basically you've got to fight
Okay.
like some sort of like eldritch horror to facilitate a gay wedding.
Oh,
And yeah,
okay.
it's
That's
like
so bizarre.
there's these two dudes who are in love with each other, and apparently like some sort of like eldritch space Cthulhu is like, like ruining their big day or something like that.
Only
And
Borderlands. Oh man.
Borderlands is wild. But and we had a conversation about that. And I guess I would say like and again like be subject to your conscience, but like also understand that there's wisdom. And anytime like a lot of this stuff, I don't I don't want to sort of sound like alarmist or hand wringing, but like I think there's like culturally we can be sort of inoculated to a lot of this stuff. Like
Mm,
I think even about how I personally think about um just the LGBTQ sort of stuff as a general rule, and how a lot of that stuff doesn't phase me the same way that it used to. And some of that could just be like, it could be some wisdom. It could be maturity. It also could be
sure.
just like, we're so used to being bombarded by it that you just
hmm
kind of get numb to it and you just accept it as being like a little bit normal.
hmm
Um, and so what I would say is like, be on guard against that, but don't also sort of, we don't want to fall into the error of just sort of like almost sort of like treating it as like satanic panic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like the fact is, I think Mandelbrot, you brought up the fact that like you don't want your kid, like as Christians, we shouldn't live in bubbles. Like
hmm
the world is going to do these things, and we need to find useful ways of being able to navigate these fields. And
hmm
you can't do that by running away and sort of isolating. Now, obviously, we want to speak truth into this. We want to speak truth to the power of the world. Like we want to say, like, no, the God of the universe has established created order. He's made man, he's made woman, and the only proper context for sexual relationships is between a husband and a wife in a heterosexual marriage. Like that's it. That's how God designed it. and then we, and we want to give people the gospel, and we say like, and you know what, like the thing is like, you aren't defined by what you want to like, copulate with. Rather, like you are defined by the author of the universe,
Yeah.
and he has made a way for you to be with him through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, his son. And so there's a way that like, and I know that in some ways I'm not giving like a hard and fast answer, because I don't think there's a hard and fast answer. I think like this is something like where we have to like come at it, we have to work through it, and it's hard. And I don't think the answer is going to be like, I don't think there's this broad brush answer where it's like, play this, don't play this, play this,
Yeah.
don't play this, play like, no, I'm like, one, if you don't feel good about it, bounce out. If you feel like it's being a little too celebratory, or you don't like the way that it's sort of like, and like making you think about this,
Mm-hmm.
bounce out. I can't remember what it was. I did play something though recently where, you were like, it kind of puts you in the steps of a gay character. And it was kind of heartbreaking for me, because I'm watching this, and this whole person, this person's entirety of their identity, and like this coming out, and like the fear of rejection from their mom and their dad and all this other stuff. And there's a part of me, it's like, I very much like, I felt empathy. I felt sympathy for that scenario, because that is tough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the fear of rejection, the fear of like, even like, especially the fear of rejection in parents, and like, oh, my mom and dad are gonna disown me or whatever, and
That's scary.
that is scary. Like that is tough, and I think that it's just. But at the same time, like, I think what kind of broke my heart in that scenario, and again, I can't remember the exact details where what I was playing or watching or whatever that kind of got me in this headspace. But then I
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about like, how sad is it that this person is like willing to, like, it kind of broke my heart, because the person in this scenario was willing to like hedge everything on this
Mm.
broken impulse, to sort of like this desire to follow their own heart, and
Mm-hmm.
follow into destruction. And it's
Yeah.
like, and anyways, I'm not, but what I'm saying there is, I think there's a good impulse here, and that, and like, there are some things where it's like, it's kind of like there was a, I can't remember, I want to say it was like during like a Supreme Court hearing or something, but it was like, define pornography. And the one person responded, said like, you can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And I think,
Hmm.
as long as you are pursuing wisdom, you're pursuing maturity, you're growing in discipline, as long as you're cultivating like a healthy spiritual life, you're going to know gross, and you're going to know over the line the minute you see it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's like, you're not always going to be able to prevent that. Sometimes you will. Like sometimes you can just like snapshot, like, nah, that's not getting in.
Sure.
Like, but a lot of times it's like, it's like knowing like when you're in the process and saying like, nope, here, we're done. And
Mm-hmm.
I think like being sort of open to just like kind of dropping the hammer, like holding the games we play very, very lightly. And the
Mm-hmm.
minute that they start to offend our conscience, we're like, nah, this goes out.
Yeah. It's like what you said earlier with gaming being something that you have in like an open hand, right? If
Hmm.
it's bugging you, or if it's, bothering you. I think bothering you would probably be a better term. Um, just let go of it pretty easily. I know for me personally, when it comes to this specific kind of topic, my whole approach has always been, I don't typically mind if there's a character who's gay, bi, whatever in a game, but it all depends on the context, how they're written, those sorts of things. Because some games, I'll actually give you two diametrically opposed examples here. Persona 4 Golden, one of my favorite games of all time. Easily one of my favorite JRPGs of all time. Love that game, stem to stern. Music's great, combat's great, story's great, really cool stuff. Kanji deals with same sex attraction, and he's well written to where when you play the game, you feel for the character. He's fighting these urges. but at the same time, he's trying to wrestle with who he is, and that's kind of the whole thing about the game. Each character's trying to like wrestle with who they are and come to terms with that. I think that is well written. You know, I honestly don't really remember where Kanji honestly settles on it, but he became one of my favorite characters just because he's conflicted, and I think that's what makes a character attractive or appealing to people. One that's conflicted, one that we can relate to, one that's struggling. We like, okay, we can kind of relate to some degree. We're trying to find acceptance. We're all trying to find acceptance. That's why a lot of people love social media. We want our voices heard. We want to be accepted. We want to belong somewhere, right? I think we all can relate to that. Let me translate it or transition to Trails of Cold Steel. There's a character in there called Angelica, who's a lesbian character. She is not well written. And in a lot of ways, she is a scummy character. She is a creepy character. She is a predatorial character who you could probably, when you dig down deep into it, can even make the case that she might abuse her power as a member of royalty to have her way with characters. Now that's never made clear in the game, but that's something that you could bring into the discussion. Like, that's not good. And so here you have two diametrically opposed, or two types of characters that are in that, I guess, field of LGBT stuff. That one is really well written, and I don't have a problem with it. I think Kanji is really cool. Angelica, though, easily one of the worst characters in gaming I've ever come across. Can't stand her at all. There's nothing admirable about her. There's nothing cool. She has one cool moment with her dad in Cold Steel 2, and to me, that's the only redeeming thing about her character. I know people will disagree with me, and that's fine, but do so peacefully in the comments section on YouTube, or I'll just block you. So my whole thing is, if you're going to put this kind of stuff in the game, and this goes for any kind of theme, handle it well. That's all I really care about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, don't just shoehorn this crap in just to try and make people feel better about themselves, because you're not doing anyone, you're doing everybody a disservice at that point. You're not doing good on the writing front. You're not doing good at making people feel like seen or whatever, or any of that front. You're not doing a very good job. But at the same time, I mean, let's be honest. And I think Adam has said this, former co-host Adam has said this on the show. Mike has said this on the show before. Mike, or not Micah, but Mandelbrot, you've even said this too. This type of thing is extremely prevalent today. We're going to see it, and especially in the gaming industry, it really appears that within the gaming industry, you're only allowed to think one way. And if you think remotely anything differently, you're ostracized. So we're going to see this stuff in games. You're going to hear this stuff no matter where you go. And I can tell you right now, and man, I don't know, how you're raising your kids, but I'm just bringing this up just for parents out there. If you're sending your kids to public schools, your kids have already heard about this. And not just the high schoolers, not just the junior high kids in elementary too. So if you're not having these conversations with your kids, you really need to, because they're hearing about it from other places. Would you rather them hear about it from Google or school or their friends, or would you rather talk to them about it? You can't shy away from this. And I'm not saying that to like slight schools. I'm an educator myself. But I'm just saying, like, when you get a group of people in one like scenario, one ecosystem, one environment, you're going to have a variety of opinions. And even if you're at a Christian school, you're going to have a variety of opinions. Don't think that just because you send your kids to Christian schools that all they're getting is 100% sound theology, because I can guarantee you they're not. These are conversations that we need to be having with our kids, with each other. And that's really what this show is designed to do, or what we aim to do, is when we interact with games specifically, we look at the themes, we look at the characters, we look at how it's written, and we ask ourselves, okay, let's unpack this a little bit. This theme right here, is this good? How is it presented? Does it line up with what scripture says? If it does, cool. What can we learn from this? If it doesn't line up with scripture, what can we still learn from this? What are they trying to convey in this story? What are they trying to do with these characters? What are they trying to do with just how they're setting a lot of things up? And for me, I'm 100% a story guy. If it's presented well, if it's written well, okay, I'm interested. let me see where this goes. But if it's not presented well, then I'm like, I don't care. I don't even know what you're really trying to accomplish, you know? But Nate, I feel like I've rambled on long enough. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think the one thing I would say is like going back to kanji sort of to like the reality is that we're going to be facing people like this, you know, in it we're going like even the this Angelica character, like humanity is messy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
due to the fall, like humanity
Yeah.
is just messy. And there's a lot of like really complicated stuff out there. And I just would encourage people like I said, if you're playing it and you feel like you shouldn't be playing it, stop. Just
Yeah.
again, just like cold stop, just like drop the hammer on it. But I think sometimes it's like if this helps you to maybe understand this position, and again, like I said, I can't remember for the life of me what it was I was reading or playing or watching,
Yeah.
and I just like it, but it was like I understood that, like, and it's like you said, we all want to belong, and in a way, we're meant to belong. Like we
Yeah.
are built for community. We're
Yeah.
meant to sort of like we're meant to be in that. So yeah, it's just it's messy, and
Mm-hmm.
just I guess I guess my closing thoughts on it is like don't be afraid to get a little messy with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously, don't violate scripture, don't violate your conscience, but
Yeah.
like it's going to be messy, so maybe wade in and sort of like wrestle with it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um
And I mean Nate, I love that you brought in like it gives you a certain perspective. That's one of the cool things about not just gaming, but just entertainment as a whole. You know, we love storytelling. We as humans, we love telling stories. We love listening to stories, really good stories. And one of the powerful things about storytelling is that it can give you a different perspective and maybe challenge some thoughts that you had before that no other sort of thing can really do. And the nice thing about video
mhm.
games is that it kind of gives you that almost first person perspective where
Yeah.
you're engaging with it, you know, and you're interacting with characters and that let me phrase it this way. You're interacting with characters that you may not interact with in the real life just because of like where you might live or just your nature of your work. Um, you just might not encounter certain types of people, whoever they may be. And one of the cool things about gaming, and it can give you a glimpse into that. Now, I'm not saying every game does this, right? Like Geometry Wars definitely doesn't do this. But something like maybe The Last of Us Part 2 could do that, right? Especially with its theme of like revenge, cyclical violence. You know, it kind of plays into the whole phrasing or old homage or quote of an eye for an eye makes the world go blind, that sort of
Mhm.
thing, which is really what that game's getting at. And in some ways, that may not be for you. But something I do want to talk about Spider Man 2 specifically is the devs have come out and said that this is a darker story, as it always is whenever the symbiote is involved. It's
Mhm.
always darker because that symbiote, when it latches onto someone, it corrupts them, it changes them, it makes them more aggressive, more violent. It just turns them into a different person. And so, yeah, it's going to be a darker story. Um, and this may be a game that, you know, for some of you parents, you might have to play some of the story stuff when the kiddos aren't around, depending on where it goes. But
Mm.
it's one of those things where you know, if your kid sees it, you got to be open to having those discussions. That was my big thing when I was a youth pastor. It's my big thing now. Have those discussions. This is one of the things I appreciate about Micah. I think in the last episode, he was talking about his kids were playing Spider Man and even a few other games, and things were coming up and they were having discussions about it. And
Mhm.
I think that's really the best way to approach it is to have those conversations yourself because when you show your kids doing that, you kind of extend that olive branch a little bit that your kids are like, "Oh, my parents are cool. We can talk about these things and it's okay." But if you hide it, don't talk about it, it makes it a little bit harder for your kids to come talk to you about some things. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe Spider-Man 2 will be that bridge for some parents. But one of the things I did also want to kind of talk about here, because John did ask about, boundaries.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
do we have any kind of boundaries? mine are like, I mean, I've been gaming for so long. Mine have formed over the years. You guys can listen to the show. That there's some things that have changed. There's some things that are still the same. Obviously, things that where characters that are engaging in like sexual acts and stuff. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really mess with that. I think probably the most not relevant, probably the most recent case or example I can point to is Cyberpunk 2077. There's a a lot of stuff in there that I just ignore or walk past or just don't even mess with because I'm like, yeah, I know past Logan. I know the stuff that he got into. I don't want to open that door again. We're just going to
Yeah.
avoid all that stuff. We're going to go hack these computer systems over here and blow some stuff up and talk to some robots. We're going to do that. Which is something we could probably get into a little bit later is like, can you play a game and enjoy certain aspects, but condemn others, but that's a whole other thing. There's that stuff like the supernatural stuff I got to be real careful about because like, especially when horror films, like I don't mess with the supernatural stuff because I'm like, I know this stuff is real. I don't want that in my head. And my mind already haunts me enough at times.
Yeah.
I don't want that extra stuff being compounded on top of it. And then blood and gore for me personally, like I gotta be, I can't play Mortal Kombat anymore. It grosses me out. I actually
Yeah.
watched a video not too long ago because someone uploaded like all the fatalities from the new Mortal Kombat on YouTube, which I'm surprised it's even still up. And I was watching the fatalities and I was like, yep, still can't play this game. Nope.
I
Nope.
watched the trailer because like Omni-Man from
Mm,
Invincible is going to be like a playable character. And I
mm-hmm.
watched like the trailer for his fatalities and I was like, yo, this is gratuitous. Like
Yeah.
really, like this is unpleasant.
Yeah.
It kind of gave me like, made me a
Made you a
little
little queasy,
queasy in my
didn't it?
guts. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was like, oh,
Yeah.
this, um,
I'll say this though.
yeah.
Doom, freaking love Doom.
Well, I mean,
I'm cool with Doom to a degree. To a
to
degree.
yeah, no,
But
Doom is like, yeah, it's like, the ripping and tearing and like
mhm.
shotgunning demons and chainsawing them, and there is something about that. There's a weird sort of like dissonance there, where it's
Mhm.
like, but I think, you know, for me, well, like sort of going back to that, like the minute I feel like I shouldn't be playing something, that needs to be the minute when I drop it. So like
Yeah.
you and I were talking a little bit about Snap before we started recording the show proper. And I just hit a point where I needed to walk away from it. And I was like, I kind of knew that I did. So that's like when a game, and I think the way that I've put it is like because recreation is meant to serve you, it's meant to refresh you. And so the minute it
Mhm.
stops refreshing you and it starts ruling you, um, yeah, at the very least should prompt a reexamination of your relationship with that game.
Yeah.
Some of the more like low-hanging fruit is like, so gratuitous nudity and sexual content, like if I know that's a part of the game, like that's usually kind of an out for me.
Mhm.
Um like it's just it's I don't struggle with that temptation the way that some people do, but occasionally, like I'm just like I'm also not really willing to put it in my field,
Yeah.
so to speak. Uh, I think the thing that for me is just, and this is more of like a story, kind of, or just a general tone. So a lot like to give you and to give people an example of what I'm talking about. Like a lot of people when Game of Thrones was on television, a lot of people like a lot in Christian circles, there was a lot of conversation about the nudity, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But
Oh, I remember.
the fact of the matter was like the thing that I thought was even more disturbing and gross about that, and the thing is like that I would actually talk to people about was like, and this is kind of a drum I've been beating for a while, but it was like George R. R. Martin made no bones about the fact that he was basically trying to sort of do a nihilistic version of Lord of the Rings, kind of like he
Mhm.
wanted to do a nihilistic answer to Tolkien's work.
Yeah.
And when and it's there's a lot of like television and just a lot of like the entertainment we've sort of got today has like this kind of like really mean spirited bent where it
Mm,
rejoices in being ugly, it rejoices in being in cruel and kind of
yeah.
petty and gross. Like I think about stuff like The Boys on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that kind of, but it's like if a show kind of glories in the pointlessness of it all and the sort of like the futility and embraces that nihilism, to me that's a hard out.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
because when we're talking about like this stuff, a lot of it is like not every game is about, like you mentioned, Geometry Wars is just like it's a fun arcade, like get the highest score, like do the combos, like just kind of like turn your brain off and like say,
Yeah.
ooh, pretty colors for a while.
Yeah. As Girlfriend Reviews calls it, diarrhea Christmas lights. It's really what it is.
That's a great, that is that descriptor on point. Like,
Yeah.
like nailed it. Um, but so for me, what I've noticed is like if I'm playing a game and it just sort of seems like pointless and kind of ugly for the sake of being ugly, and kind of mean and nasty, and rejoices in sort of like that pettiness, like I'm
Hmm.
out. Like I don't have the time or patience for that. I don't have like a lot of hard and fast rules because I think part of the thing is like the games are art. And in a way, art is meant to sort of challenge us. It's meant to give us a new perspective. It's meant to sort of help us out, think outside our normal boxes. And so, like I said, there are some things like obviously, and that even goes to like the gore with like Mortal Kombat. Like it's just gross for being gross's sake.
Hmm.
Like, and anything that glories in that, like I'm just like I just don't like hanging out in that space. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't have a ton of like. There are some things where I won't play them just because, like you mentioned Alien Isolation, and
Hmm.
that's a game that I have like side eyed so many times. But I'm like such a giant chicken sometimes. Jump scares,
Yeah.
jump scares, like which is weird because like Resident Evil 2 and 4,
Hmm.
which have plenty of jump scares in them. Dead Space,
Yeah.
plenty of jump scares. I
Yeah.
love those games, but like jump scares, just like I'm just like, ah.
Yeah. It's the first person aspect too that makes it even more like terrifying too. I mean, it's and I can tell you just from playing Alien Isolation, it's definitely a scary game. It being in first person does not make it any
Does not
less
make it.
terrifying. Something about the xenomorph being right there in your face. I don't know why I did that because there's the little what are those things? The face huggers that I don't know why I put my hand on my face. It makes me think of a face hugger now. Now,
Well,
great. Now I'm freaked out. Yeah. Anyway, it's scary, man. So
yeah,
I don't blame you.
it's and I think too, you mentioned too, like, and this is like that stuff dealing with like the occult or sort of like
Hmm.
really like smacking up against demonic sort of activity in realistic ways. Um, you avoid that. And I think like it's wise to understand like our limits because like I have an imagination that sometimes like yes,
Hmm.
um will latch onto that stuff in very unhealthy ways. So
Yeah.
like I totally get like there's a lot of content that I don't find like morally offensive, but also like it tempts me to
Yeah.
like go down some really weird paths. I would also, the last but not least, or lastly, then this is the last thing, a game that feeds my darker impulses. So,
Mm.
um, like we mentioned Doom, and while Doom is like really cool and cathartic, there are times where like it would heighten my sort of aggression
Yeah.
in the sense that like that sort of, and so
I can see that.
like that's stuff at the very least that is sort of like in my warning zone where it's like
Hmm.
if I notice myself being like a little more irritable or kind of like wanting to like pick a fight with somebody or something like that's an indicator for me that at the very least I need to step away from something for a
Yeah.
little bit. Like
Yeah.
the high stakes, high tension kind of stuff that
Yeah.
might feed some of that.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
so
I hear you. I hear you. But Anyway, I know we've covered this from a very general sense. If you want to know our thoughts on like specific games, obviously places like the Discord is a good place to discuss that. There's a chance that a game that those of you that are listening to that are curious about, we may have done an episode on. You can check our backlog. I know our episodes only go so far back here on YouTube. You can go to our website and listen to previous episodes as well. But I think kind of at the core of it, I think we've hit a lot of these questions that John and Mandelbrot have posed here. It's and this is going to sound bad. I know how it's going to sound, but at the core, at just the glance, I think for Nate and I both, it's one of those things where we recognize it when we see it. As far as what that is, you got a little bit of a glimpse into the behind the scenes stuff of how that's informed here on the show. And of course, I mean, we can delve into it more. We just kind of, need the questions for it, I guess, to help kind of guide the discussion a little bit more. But hopefully that was a good enough primer. But again, I mean, it goes back to kind of what this show is all about. We want to play these games and we don't want to shy away from them. And we want to look at the themes presented. We want to look at the characters, how they're written and how they are, and just examine it, from a biblical worldview. And we've done that before. And another cool plug, I'll throw into here too, is last year around this time we had Joe Thorne on from Doctrine and Devotion, and we talked about horror just as a genre, and got into a pretty good discussion on there. The episode, I think last I checked, is approaching 2,000 views on YouTube, so it's cool that it's being a resource for people. But if you're listening and you're curious about that too, you can go check that out on YouTube as well. It was a good time. We got to sit down with Joe Thorne. It was a lot of fun. But we've also covered a lot of other games too. I mean, I think we've talked about horror at least once a year. Usually around this time.
I mean, it's the appropriate time for it,
it's
man.
Timely. So. It's timely, man. So it is what it is. But anyway, y'all, thank you for writing into the show, patrons, and thank you for listening to this episode. Now, before we end the show here, we got to end the show a couple different ways like we normally do. This being the second or third episode of the month, it is our time for patron thank yous. These are the people who support us over on patreon.com. They allow us to continue doing what we do here at the show, get new upgrades for equipment, buy games so we can talk about them on the show, and things of that nature. And so we're going to shout them out here on this episode of the podcast. Nate, you want to help me shout these people out?
Sure, man. Want me to do the red?
Do you do the red? I'll do the blue as usual here. Here we go. We want to shout out Aaron L. White, Alan Z, Alex Castellanos, Boulder, Chris Freeman, Christopher Commander, David Matthews, Derek Smith, Dorian Taylor, Hunter Blake, Jake Walker, Jimmy Changa, Joanne Monroe, John Carr, John Hannon, Jonathan Harrison, Josh Broccolo, Korodaki, Mandelbrot 86, Matthew Millsap,
Melvin Benson V, Micah Hendrick, Michael Toller, Mr. B, Mr. Butts, who is not so I have a bit of an airing of a grievance because he comes right before me in the patron read. And sometimes when Micah says it, it's like Mr. Butts, Nate McKeever. And it's kind of like this thing where it's like Mr.
It's a title.
Butts. Yes. And I'm like, I don't appreciate that. I appreciate the name, the name Mr. Butts. I like it. I'm just saying, Micah, I need a more significant pause here. So Mr. Butts, me, Nate McKeever, Richard Marroquin, Ryan 1701E, Sam White, Savone Pena, Scruffosaurus, Sojourner, Third Strongest Mole, shout out Third Strongest Mole, represent. Tim Syriac, Travis Webb, Vincent Yu, Wesley Ray, Xavier Medina, and Yuki Ali?
I think it's Ali.
Yuki Ali.
There we go. You know what's funny, Nate, is when I put this through post-production on Zencastr, I have it remove long pauses. So I have a feeling that long pause you just did is just going to get cut out anyway, and Zencastr is going to put two together, and it's still going to sound like it's going to say Mr. Butts, me, Nate McKeever. It's just going to be even more funny. Really, I think what it is, I don't think it's Micah in his Spider-Man boxers. I think it's Zencastr messing up Micah and just doing it.
It's like the AI in Marvel Snap. The Zencastr just hates me and it wants to be like Nate McKeever is a Mr. Butts.
It's just AI in general, man. That's what it
It all
is. It's
hates me.
it all it all hates you, man. It all hates you. That's how it goes, I guess. But anyway, we wouldn't be an episode of TRG if we didn't do some recos. By the way, if you guys see me, if you're watching the video and you see me like constantly looking down like this and typing, I'm getting the timestamps in as I'm going because I'm trying to get better about that. So that way it's a little bit easier for editing and getting this out to patrons. So I'm not texting while I'm doing the podcast. I'm trying to get the timestamps. Regardless, though, it's time for the recos. Nate, what are some things that our dear
So I'm
listeners should
going
check
to
out?
start with the one that you and I were sort of talking about. Pigmented on
Yeah.
Etsy does these really super, super cool wooden cases for games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The one that sort of really got my attention was there's a Wind Waker version for the GameCube. It's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. But Pigmented, it's Pigminted over on
Mm-hmm.
Etsy. Go check out his stuff. Um, the other two, so there's a podcast I've been listening to called Haunted Cosmos. Now, what I will say is like this comes like with major caveats, all right? Um, if you kind of want to be a little like creeped out and bugged out, um, but also hear two Presbyterian brothers sort of talk about the craziness that is God's creation in a way that tackles like Bigfoot, aliens, Nephilim, fairies, spooky stories, all sorts of like weirdness. It's really cool. It will also like bug you all the way out sometimes. Like it's one of those things. And what I would say is like it's definitely not for everybody. Um, but their whole shtick is like the world that we live in isn't just stuff. And kind of like their thing is like it's Ben Save and or no Brian Save and Ben Garrett, and they're kind of
Okay.
just it's really it's pretty interesting. It's a little creepy. It's um but it's also like been really helpful for me and really encouraging because at the same time they're like talking about stuff that's like kind of spooky, kind of creepy because it's like, we were talking about, we know that it's real.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they're very like quick to remind us that like, you know what though? Like the thing is like, are these things like spooky? Are they kind of creepy? Are they? Yeah. But the king of the cosmos is my caretaker. Like
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is my shepherd, and he has firmly put all of these things under his boot. And so, we can take heart in light of these things. We don't go looking for fights in that
Right.
realm,
Right.
but at the same time, like we can sort of go in with our eyes open, and it's been cool. So that's one. But like I said, major caveat: that podcast will not be for everybody. Um, so the other one is I've been playing a bunch of games, and I mentioned Faith, the Unholy Trinity, which is
Mm-hmm.
super creepy again, and then Ghost of Tsushima. But something I beat not too long ago was the game Inscription,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's a deck building roguelite
Mm-hmm.
that has super spooky vibes. And that's also a major caveat because at times it can be a little grotesque.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a really cool game and it's really good and it's really clever. If you can sort of see it through, and it's not super long. So if you're looking for something that's kind of creepy, it's not creepy the whole way through. Like the
Mm-hmm.
first act is like the creepiest bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah. Uh, so yeah,
Fair
Inscription's
enough.
cool. I think people ought to play it.
Yeah, you had recommended that game to me not too long ago, I don't think, and I
Mm-hmm.
downloaded it onto my PlayStation. I didn't even know I had it, but I did, and it's sitting there. I'm trying to work up the courage to get to it because
It's not that spooky. It's like it's more of just like it's a little unsettling. But
okay,
once you get into it, I don't think it's not gonna like it's not gonna creep you out like I don't know. I'm trying to find like
okay,
a like did you play Doki Doki Literature Club?
yeah, yeah,
it kind of vibes like Doki Doki Literature Club
Oh,
for me.
okay. That's fine.
So
That's not too
it's
bad.
got some vibes, and it'll be
That's
like
not too
there'll
bad.
be some bits that like, oh,
It's
but
like, oh, okay.
yeah.
Fair enough. Well, right on, man. Well, my recos are, I just watched, me and my wife, we typically watch, spooky movies around this time of year, but we decided this year to kind
Not
of,
just 90 Day Fiance.
well, we
In
got to have something.
addition to those.
Well, we have to have something to watch on the other days of the week when we don't have a new episode of 90 Day or 90 Day the other way. We got to have something to watch. And so this year we kind of decided, you know what, we're going to kind of scale back on the type of horror stuff that we watch. And we're probably going to just leave it just to the monster movies, like Alien, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, which is one of our personal favorites. And we were sitting there talking about, what kind of movies do we want to watch? Oh, by the way, shout out to Hulu's Goosebumps, Micah's new show. Great. Watched the first episode, was like, oh my gosh, this is surprisingly good. So Micah, congrats on your new show. And we joke, if you guys don't get that joke, go back to the episode with Joe Thorne. Joe Thorne was telling Micah how much he looks like Justin Long. Justin Long is in Goosebumps. Anyway, me and my wife, we were talking about some of the spooky movies, and we were kind of going through HBO Max, and we saw Scooby-Doo was on there, and she was talking about like the old animated ones. And I was like, yeah, I've seen the live action one, but she's like, oh, have you seen the Zombie Island one? Because she knows how much I'm kind of like I like zombies. I'm like, no, I never saw Scooby
Is
Doo on
that the one
Zombie
with
Island.
Scrappy? Is Scrappy in that one?
Scrappy's not on Zombie Island. He might be on Return to Zombie Island.
Okay.
But she like lost her mind. She's like, how have you not seen Scooby Doo on Zombie Island? I'm like, I've never seen it. Like, it's like, we're gonna watch it. I was like, all right, fine. So I bought it on iTunes and we watched it. And I'm like, dude, just from an animation aspect, this movie is just fun to watch from the animation aspect side of things. I'm like, this is just fluid. It's cool. The color, like, it's a good time. The accents are all over the place because it's down in the Louisiana Bayou and all that stuff. And man, some people cannot do their accents well, but it's fun to make fun of them. All that being said, though, it was cool. It was a cool take on a Scooby-Doo story, and I'm like, this is not bad. This is delightful, dare I say? So, Scooby-Doo on a Zombie Island. It's a good time. It's really not that scary. I don't think it's scary at all. But it's a good time if you want to watch something. You can check that out. The other two things I want to highlight. First one is I was going on Spotify, and I was thinking about Spotify. They have that release radar playlist that updates every so often. And I saw a song on there. I was like, this is a song from East, which is a Falcom game. Why is this on here? What's this Falcom sound team JDK? I clicked on it, and literally every single album from every single Falcom game is on Spotify. I'm like, well, crap. I'm going to be listening to all the Trails or all the songs from the past Trails games during class now and introducing that to my students. It's not their thing, by the way. But anyway, if you like video game music and you want a treasure trove of good JRPG style music, Falcom Sound Team JDK on Spotify is worth your time. My last reco is serve your local church. Maybe you've been attending your church for a while now and you're just, content to show up on a Sunday and that be it. Get plugged in somewhere. Help out with something. Use some of those skills you got. I've been doing the video side of things for my church for the last month and a half now. And there's times it's frustrating. I'm not going to lie. Just because it just comes with the territory when you're recording stuff, it happens. Like this week, I had to record the video announcements twice because the first time the audio wasn't good. And so I'm like, well, we got to do it again. But it's been good. It's been nice to kind of flex those muscles and learn the programs a little bit more. And it's been a good response from people. People are glad someone is doing it. And that someone is not them. It's someone who knows what they're doing. But it's been a good time. And man, it's got me kind of more connected with some of the people in my church. And it's just kind of been like a good reminder, that if you're serving at a church, you're doing what you're supposed to. Don't just be someone who just shows up on a Sunday. Find some way to get plugged in and help, even if it means you just show up on a Sunday and greet people. That is a ministry in and of itself. But use the skills that God's given you. and get plugged in at your church and just kind of see where that goes, you know, and don't be afraid to try new stuff.
100% cosign on that, man.
Yeah, man. It's a good time. It is a good time. Plus, you never know. You might be the person that starts up a new ministry at your church too. You know, maybe you're artistic and you like that and you can start a creative ministry in your church. You never know. I'm just saying. You never know. But those are my recos. And that pretty much brings this episode of TRG to a close. A beefy episode of TRG at that. Almost a full 2 hours. That being said, y'all, if you like what we do here at TRG, there's a few different ways you can support us. If you want to support us financially and get some perks, you can do so over on patreon.com/thereformedgamers, such as, you know, access to write-ins, early uncut access to episodes, behind the scene, or not behind the scenes, but an extra episode of the podcast called Talk TRG, which is kind of more of a grab bag conversational podcast. That's over on Patreon. But understand if you can't support financially, you know, especially with the way the economy is right now, and maybe you're saving up for some games, totally get it. There's a lot of other ways you can support us. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and let's continue the conversation going on over there. You can also visit our website, thereformedgamers.com, for past episodes of the podcast, resources, and more. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can join our Discord server and connect with the community as well. But with that being said, Nate, thank you again, man, for coming in clutch, joining me on this episode, helping fill in that second seat, man.
Yeah,
and,
well,
it's a good time.
Thanks for asking me to, fill in for that bum Micah, who's probably totally no-lifing Spider-Man too, as we speak.
He's probably got the platinum trophy for it already.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
he's sneaky like that.
That's how he rolls, man. That's how he rolls. He's an efficient gamer. Also, sidebar, I totally almost forgot. Links to everything we talked about will be in the show notes, including a link to Nate's podcast, Backlog Breakdown. Go check that out. Go listen. Have a good time.
We don't do timestamps.
Nate, you had to. Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, I'm not gonna get that bait. I'm not gonna bite that bait.
It's a trap.
It's a trap, 100%. But anyway, dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of TRG. With that being said, be a dear, keep it locked here, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to TRG. The show is fully supported over on patreon.com by our dear listeners. The following are our supporters at the producer level or higher, and we are thankful for their continued support that allows us to continue doing what we do here at TRG. Those people are Mr. Butts, David Matthews, Richard Marroquin, and Alan Z. Thank you again for your continued support over on patreon.com, where you can pledge your support to the show and get early uncut access to all of our episodes, behind the scenes, and more. Thank you for listening, and until next time, be a dear, keep it locked here. We'll see you in the next episode.